Max Taylor wasn't the kind of guy who liked unnecessary attention. He preferred the company of his computer screen over small talk and block parties, maintaining a quiet life in Crestwood, Missouri. It wasn't that he disliked his neighbors. He just enjoyed solitude. But on this Thursday afternoon, everything was about to change. After a frustrating few weeks of slow internet and endless buffering, Max decided to take matters into his own hands. He pulled out his phone to check his Wi-Fi settings, only to discover a device he didn't recognize connected to his network. The name gave him pause, Crestwood I-01. Who was using his Wi-Fi without permission? Irritated, Max swiftly disconnected the device and changed his password, leaning against the side of his house while typing in the new credentials. Just then, from the kitchen window across the street, Melanie Foster observed him, her brow furrowing in suspicion. To her, Max was always a loner, someone who kept to himself. "What's he doing over there?" she murmured, phone in hand. She had never trusted him, and now, seeing him intently focused on his screen, her instinct screamed that something was off. Before she could rationalize her thoughts, she grabbed her phone, dialing 911. "Yes, I need to report something suspicious. My neighbor is outside. I think he's hacking," she said, her voice shaky with paranoia. The dispatcher asked a few questions, but Melanie could only repeat her unease, insisting that Max was up to something. Little did she know, her call would set off a series of events that would change everything. Max was oblivious to the drama playing out on the other side of the street. It wasn't until he heard the sirens that he lifted his head, seeing a police cruiser slow to a stop right in front of his house. Two officers stepped out, Detective Luis Navarro and Officer Bell Carter. Max felt a knot of anxiety tighten in his chest. "Sir," Navarro called out, his tone authoritative yet calm. "We got a call about suspicious activity. Can you tell us what you're doing?" Max took a deep breath, still trying to process the situation. "I'm changing my Wi-Fi password," he replied, his confusion creeping through as he crossed his arms defensively. "Do you live here?" Navarro probed, and Max almost laughed at the ridiculousness of the question. His car was right in the driveway. "Yes," he replied tightly. Before Navarro could ask another question, Melanie stepped onto her porch, her eyes narrowing. "He's lying," she interjected. "He's always out there doing something weird with his phone." Max gaped at her, incredulous. "I was on my router settings because someone has been using my Wi-Fi. I don't know who it is, but it's not me." Melanie rolled her eyes, unimpressed. "Oh, sure. You expect me to believe that?" Navarro turned back to the officer, his patience clearly waning. "Do you have any evidence that Mr. Taylor has done something illegal?" Melanie hesitated, suddenly aware that she had no real proof. I just think he should be checked out." Max watched the exchange, frustration bubbling beneath his skin. "Look, I just want this resolved. Check my router if you want," he said, reluctantly offering his phone to Navarro. Navarro accepted it and leaned in, scrutinizing the list of devices. That's when Max noticed the officer's expression shift. "What do you see?" Navarro's lip curled in disbelief. "Who owns this device?" He pointed at Crestwood I-01. Max shook his head, his gut churning with dread. "I don't know, but if you look at the logs, is someone using your Wi-Fi to spy?" Carter cut in, her voice low and urgent. "Yes," Max said, his voice barely a whisper. Melanie stepped back, her eyes widening. "What are you saying?" "I mean someone has accessed my security cameras," he replied, dread pooling in his stomach. Silence hung in the air, thick and suffocating. The officers exchanged glances, and Max felt the atmosphere shift. "Listen, we need to get to the bottom of this," Navarro said, his tone serious. "Let's go inside your house and check this out." Max nodded, leading them into his home, a whirlwind of emotions swirling within him. Part of him was angry for being unjustly scrutinized, but another part was terrified of what they might uncover. He pulled up the router settings on his laptop as the officers stood behind him, fear and adrenaline mixing into a potent cocktail in the pit of his stomach. The moment he mirrored the settings, everyone saw it. The device labeled Crestwood I-01 remained connected, its presence ominous and undeniable. It was a wordless verdict. He was not alone in this. What kind of device is this? Carter asked, her curiosity piqued. I can't tell for sure, Max said, his fingers moving across the keyboard as he opened the activity logs. As he scrolled, dread seeped through him. It's been connected to my camera feeds, and I don't just mean mine. The realization of what he was saying froze the air in the room. Max turned to face the officers and Melanie, his expression grave. We're not just talking about me, hey. What do you mean? Melanie asked, her voice quivering. I mean, someone is watching all of us, Max replied, the weight of his words crashing down through the silence. And just like that, the real game, one of surprises, fear, and a potential threat lurking in the shadows, had begun. Max felt the room go cold, disbelief hanging in the air as he met Melanie's wide eyes. The frozen silence was suddenly shattered by the hum of his laptop, the data scrolling past as he continued to dig deeper. Navarro shifted closer, leaning over Max's shoulder. How many other feeds are you talking about? Max's fingers trembled as he navigated through the logs. There are multiple IP addresses. Some are my neighbors, and there are new feeds popping up that show different homes. Melanie inhaled sharply, her earlier bravado melting away. Which homes? She asked, barely managing to keep her voice steady. Max hesitated, scanning the list. Then he froze, his breath catching as he recognized a familiar address. Oh no, it's your house, Melanie, he whispered. Her face pale, she staggered back, pressing a hand to her mouth in horror. What? No, it can't be. That doesn't make any sense. Look, Max pointed to the screen. Here's the live feed from your front hallway, and there's the living room. Carter stepped closer, her brow furrowing in confusion. Are you saying someone has been able to access all of this? Max nodded, his stomach churning. Yes, and they might be watching you right now. What do you mean watching? Melanie's voice quaked as a new realization struck her. Your security system could be compromised. They're not just stealing Wi-Fi. They're spying on us, he replied, trying to steady his frantic pulse. Navarro quickly pulled out his radio. We need backup for a possible surveillance incident in Crestwood. Something larger is happening here. Feeling the urgency in the air, Max turned back to his laptop. I need to find where this data is being sent, he murmured, knowing that time was of the essence. As he worked, adrenaline coursed through his veins. Wait, this doesn't just go to a random server. It's being sent to an address right here in the neighborhood. Melanie's breath caught in her throat. You mean it's someone nearby? Max nodded, tracing the coordinates on the screen. Yes, it's coming from Brandon Foster's house, just a few doors down. A stunned silence fell over the group. Brandon was Melanie's nephew, a quiet college student who had moved back in a few months ago. No, not Brandon, Melanie whispered, shaking her head in disbelief. Are you sure? Navarro pressed, looking at Melanie with intensity. I don't want to believe it, but, she stammered, uncertainty filling her voice. This is serious, Max interjected. If he's been spying on us, we need to confront him now before he hides any evidence. What do you want to do? Carter asked, hand hovering close to her sidearm. Max shot a determined look at Melanie. You lead us there, but we need to be cautious. If he's behind this, he might react unpredictably. Nervously, Melanie agreed, leading the officers and Max down the street toward her home, dread coiling in her gut. Each step felt heavier, carrying the burden of confrontation and potential betrayal. As they approached the front door, Max's heart raced, a million thoughts racing through his mind. What if Brandon denied everything? What if he tried to run? And most importantly, what had he seen? Brandon! Melanie called out as they reached the door. We need to talk. No answer came, just an eerie stillness that escalated Max's mounting anxiety. Navarro turned to them. We're going in, he commanded before pushing the door open, stepping inside carefully, his partner right behind him. Inside, the air felt thick with tension. They moved through the narrow hallway, each corner shrouded in darkness, until they arrived at Brandon's door. Brandon! Navarro knocked sharply. Police! Open up! A moment passed. Max's breath held in his chest as they heard sounds on the other side. Something shifting, furniture scraping. "Open the door now," Carter called, her voice firm with authority. Finally, the door creaked open, revealing a startled Brandon, eyes wide and nervous as he shifted uncomfortably from foot to foot. "What's going on?" he asked, almost too defensively. "We have reason to believe you've been illegally accessing private security cameras," Navarro stated, voice low and direct. "We need you to tell us exactly what you've been doing." Brandon's reaction was immediate. A flicker of anxiety crossed his face, and he shifted nervously as if he were about to bolt. "That's insane. I haven't done anything." Max observed him closely, feeling the weight of the moment. "What do you mean you haven't done anything, Brandon? We know about your connection." Brandon's eyes darted toward the ground, uncertainty clouding his features. "Mind if we check your computer?" Navarro pressed, intent on keeping the pressure on. Brandon clenched his jaw. "You don't have a warrant." Navarro stepped forward. "Not yet, but you have a chance to avoid escalating this. Just be honest with us." Brandon hesitated, his eyes flicking towards Melanie's pleading expression. Finally, he broke. "Look, it was just a prank. I wanted to see if I could get someone's Wi-Fi. I didn't think it would get this far." Max clenched his fists at his sides, frustration filling him. "It's not just a prank, Brandon. You access security feeds. How many people did you watch?" Brandon's expression hardened, lungs expelling a shaky breath. "I didn't mean anything by it. I swear. It didn't seem real." Carter stepped closer, her eyes narrowing as she confronted him. "This isn't just about you anymore. You're violating privacy. You can't treat this like a joke." His facade crumbled as he looked at Melanie, regret etched across his features. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone," he whispered. "I didn't think it would matter." Melanie's stomach twisted as horror enveloped her. "You're saying you've been spying on us, on our family?" Brandon swallowed thickly, his arrogance replaced by visible shame. "I didn't think," he muttered, gripping the doorknob tightly. Navarro stepped forward, authoritative. "Brandon Foster, you are under arrest for unauthorized access to a computer network and unlawful surveillance." "No, please," Brandon exclaimed, panic dawning across his features. But it was too late. Officer Carter was already cuffing him, the cold metal snapping shut around his wrists. As they led Brandon out, the weight of betrayal hung heavily in the air. Max, standing outside the house, glared at the scene unfolding before him. Melanie turned to Max, her eyes brimming with tears. "I didn't want to believe it. He was family." Max shook his head, anger flaring deep within him. "This is what happens when we make assumptions. I was minding my own business changing my Wi-Fi password, and it led to all of this." "Max, she started, but he interrupted. "I don't need your apology. Just know that this could have been avoided. Next time, don't jump to conclusions." With that, Max turned away, the shadows of betrayal lingering behind him as he returned home, leaving Melanie standing amid the truth she had once denied, now grappling with a shattered sense of security. Inside his house, Max sat at the edge of his bed, the weight of the day pressing down on him like a heavy shroud. He replayed the chaotic events over and over in his mind. He had caught Brandon before the situation could spiral further, but the events felt surreal, the feeling of being accused, being watched. As he went over the details, something gnawed at the back of his mind. If Brandon was the culprit, who else might be involved? He reluctantly reopened his laptop, scanning through his network logs once more, searching for inconsistencies or hidden clues. The more he looked, the more he found evidence that suggested a network of surveillance, an intricate web of plots connecting homes throughout the neighborhood. His stomach churned as he felt it, a sense of impending darkness creeping closer, deeper than he had imagined. Noticing a strange IP address that had connected sporadically, he leaned closer. It was someone else in Crestwood, someone he hadn't considered. As he leaned over the details, his phone buzzed. It was a message from Officer Navarro. Asterisk, we've got more units checking on other addresses. Stay alert. Asterisk. Unsettled, Max typed back, Asterisk asterisk, what about the other feeds? Are they connected? Asterisk asterisk. A quick response followed. Asterisk asterisk, we'll find out. We're not alone in this. Asterisk asterisk. Dread settled over him. He couldn't shake the feeling that this wasn't over, that the shadow watching him still lay in wait. Suddenly, his phone buzzed again, and his heart leaped as another notification came in. Asterisk asterisk, new connection detected. Asterisk asterisk. What? He whispered, scanning the fine print on his screen. His heart began to race. This wasn't good. The device was still on his network. Max quickly hopped on the live feed of the router, locking in on the connection. There it was again, Crestwood I-01, still active, taunting and watching. Panic gripped him. What the hell? Without hesitating, he typed asterisk asterisk disconnect asterisk asterisk and held his breath. As the connection severed, a sudden thought hit him. Was Brandon working alone? Grabbing his jacket, Max rushed back outside, slamming the door behind him. He had to warn Melanie. They both needed to stay vigilant. Adrenaline surged through him as he approached her house, determination propelling him forward. As he neared, he spotted a light flickering inside the living room. With every step, the knot in his stomach twisted tighter. He could feel the weight of secrecy pressing around him. Max raised his hand to knock when he heard a whisper through the partially open window. No, you need to stop. They'll find out. It was Brandon's voice, low and pleading. Heart racing, Max pressed himself against the wall, straining to hear. You can't keep doing this. They'll ruin everything, Brandon continued, fear apparent in his tone. No one has to know, came another voice, someone new. Max's breath caught in his throat. Powerful instincts kicked in. This was bigger than he had thought, and the danger was clearer than ever. They needed to know what was happening inside that house. He stealthily moved to the side entrance, peering through a crack. He spotted Brandon, looking more disheveled than earlier, pacing agitatedly. Across from him stood a figure that appeared shrouded in shadows, their face barely visible but exuding a sense of danger. Max felt a mixture of fear and determination surge through him. He needed to act. Quickly, he pulled out his phone. Behind him, he could already hear sirens. Officers were swarming the neighborhood, evidence of the previous chaos palpable in the air. Suddenly, he heard a loud crash from inside. Brandon shouted, and the room fell silent. Panicking, Max pushed the door open and rushed in. What's going on? Brandon's head whipped around, wide-eyed. Max, you're not supposed to be here. The stranger turned, revealing a sly smile. Well, look who's come to play, the ever-innocent Maximum. But this is not a game. Max's heart raced as the atmosphere shifted. Who are you? He demanded, trying to mask his fear with bravado. Just a friend of Brandon's, the stranger replied smoothly, voice laced with deception. And right now, we're having a conversation about keeping secrets. Brandon's expression twisted with shame. You shouldn't be involved in any of this, Max, he warned quietly. But Max stood his ground. What do you mean? He shot back, but before he could question further, the stranger waved his hand dismissively. No need to get dramatic. All you need to know, Max, is that you're in over your head. This can end badly for you. Fear curdled inside Max, intensified by the thought of the surveillance network they had uncovered. Had he unintentionally walked into a deeper nightmare? Just then, Navarro burst through the door, followed by Carter. Hands up. We have a situation here. The stranger froze for a moment, tension stretching in the air. Then, with a smug smirk, he turned to Brandon. You really shouldn't have pulled him into this. Brandon looked devastated, shaking his head. No, it's not what you think. I didn't want any of this. Then let's find out the truth, Navarro snapped, stepping forward as the stranger backed into the shadows. Too late for that, don't you think? The stranger's voice dripped with menace. You're all too late. In a split second, before anyone could react, he darted toward the back door, slipping out into the night. Max felt a surge of panic. They couldn't let him go. Stop! Navarro shouted, but the figure was already fleeing into the darkness, weaving between the trees. Are you okay? Navarro turned to Max, who was still processing what had just happened. I think so. But the more pressing matter loomed in Max's mind. Who was that man? And how deep did this rabbit hole go? As the adrenaline began to fade, a chill swept through Maximum. He looked at Brandon, who appeared embarrassed and contrite. What were you involved in, Brandon? Max demanded, trying to keep his voice steady. Brandon ran a hand through his hair, visibly shaken. It was just harmless at first. A prank, like I said. But somehow, it spiraled out of control. Navarro's voice was low and serious as he interrogated Brandon. Just harmless. You have no idea how serious this is. Someone's been spying on your aunt and her neighbors, all because you decided to break into their networks. I didn't want anyone to be hurt. Brandon insisted, voice cracking. I just wanted to test my skills. The tension in the room grew thick as Navarro continued to press. And what about that man? Who is he? I don't know. He reached out to me after I hacked into the neighborhood's Wi-Fi. He offered to help me, to show me what I could do. It sounded so cool at first. Melanie, who had been silent, finally spoke up. But there's nothing cool about spying on us. You've put us all at risk. Brandon's shoulders slumped. I didn't think it would get this far, he whispered, tears welling in his eyes. Max turned to Navarro, urgency coursing through him. We need to figure out where that guy went. If he was working with Brandon, he's still a threat. Carter nodded, her expression hardened. Let's get a perimeter set up. We might need to involve more units to find him. Max felt a surge of determination. I can help. If you let me. If we can find where he headed. Stay back, Navarro ordered firmly. This isn't your fight anymore. You've helped enough by bringing this to our attention. Max didn't argue. He knew pushing back would only hinder their investigation. But it's my neighborhood too. This is a police matter now, and it's escalating quickly, Navarro warned. As the officers left to operate their search outside, Max turned once again to Brandon, who now stood staring at the floor, burdened and ashamed. Is there anything else you haven't told us? Max pressed, his voice low but firm. Brandon swallowed hard, seeming to contemplate something buried deep within him. Yes, there might be files I didn't delete. He told me to keep everything under wraps. Max's heart raced, pulse quickening. That means there's more to this, doesn't it? Brandon nodded slowly. I think he's been watching more than just us. What do you mean? There were names, people I didn't recognize. They were being watched too. Max's mind kicked into overdrive. You need to give us everything you have. Okay, let me think. Brandon hurried to his room, flipping through papers and hard drives, panic setting in his voice. I can't believe I got caught up in this. I thought it was just a prank. In moments, he returned with a flash drive, breathing heavily as he handed it to Maximum. I recorded everything. The logs, the interactions. It's all in there. Max took it, feeling both grateful and uneasy. You need to tell the police everything. Maybe they can trace whoever's behind this. We can't just stand by. Mouth set into a grim line. Brandon nodded, determination overtaking his earlier remorse. Fine, I'll come clean. Just then, Navarro entered the room, and Max jumped to explain. Brandon has files. There might be more people involved. Navarro's expression turned stern yet curious. Let's see it. As they reviewed the flash drive, Max felt a strange mix of hope and dread. They had stumbled onto something deeper than just neighborhood pranks. The implications loomed large as they uncovered logs and chat histories detailing secret exchanges between Brandon and a network of spies. This is serious, Navarro said, brows furrowed as they pored over the data. We need to notify everyone connected to this. Max nodded gravely. And the man who escaped? He might have just slipped us. We won't let him disappear, Navarro assured, setting off to coordinate with his fellow officers once more. You two stay put. Left alone with Brandon, Max felt a surge of mixed emotions, helplessness swirling with rage. You might have put all of our lives in danger. You know that. Brandon swallowed hard, head bowed. I didn't mean for any of this to happen. Good intentions don't change the consequences. But deep down, Max understood. Brandon had gotten lost in the complexities of technology and curiosity. It could happen to anyone, even him. Perhaps there was a lesson to be learned here, a lesson that went beyond respect for privacy. It was about understanding one another, not making assumptions. As they awaited the officer's return, the weight of what they had uncovered and the very real danger still lurking outside loomed over them, fueling an atmosphere of tension and uncertainty, the battle finally only beginning in the night that lay ahead.